Alright, time for another draft physics.com video presentation. Debate physics also, and that's really the whole point, is to engage in a actual debate where the actual points made are responded to, and the debate goes from there. Yeah, frankly, it can't go anywhere when the cowards, frankly, evade the actual arguments made and just knock down their straw man and say, look, I knocked down a straw man, I win. That just doesn't work. So when somebody actually plays my video, so we'll say yesterday's video, at the point I start drawing on the board with the 9.8, from that point for 25 minutes or so, they have to play that video and then actually sit there in their video with their dumb-looking face and explain where I'm saying something that can't be true. That's their obligation, to explain how the counter theory doesn't work. Yeah, okay. So, and as a bonus, if you can find a person of some, that doesn't stink and smell and isn't, puking in the video, then, nonsense, garbage, useless tripe, I'll even wipe out the block list. I'll start my block list over again and make a live video. But till then, fuck you. Yes, okay. The conversation is one-sided and pointless, and the cowards won't deal with the actual arguments, and they'll just keep making shit up, like Pyrrho making up that I somehow don't agree with the substance of Galilean relativity, which is just pragmatic fact relativity. That yes, I am traveling through space having the same vectors of momentum as this pen. Doesn't mean that there's no other real conditions in space except these two conditions. These aren't the only two conditions. Everything has its own little condition, and if it has a little bit of difference, then we start drifting apart, or we start drifting into each other. But there's no nonsense about frames, okay, or bent or warped space. All right, that's the part I don't believe in. I don't believe in Einsteinian relativity. All right, I don't believe the universe is a mushiverse, a wave-averse, fluff-averse, any of that crap. I believe in three-dimensional space. That's the simple statement. Absolute three-dimensional space, as Newton attempted to prove with his bucket. All right, anyway, so again, Newton wasn't a big fan of virtual reality either. Anyway, all right, so there have been some comments and then a video linked to by whatever his name is, Michael, okay, and it's such tripe, but we'll play it because it's just such tripe. Anyway, and it doesn't really address any of my points. So he's willing to write all this crap, but he's not willing to even post an unlisted video where he actually responds to what I actually said. Okay, that can't happen. Apparently nobody can muster this terrible onerous task of drawing a lever and explain how it doesn't conserve momentum, and then explain why physics keeps saying there's some things about conserving momentum. Well, obviously, if you don't have to conserve it with a lever, then I guess you don't have to conserve it at all, ever. I mean, frankly, you can't get more basic than a lever. All right, so I think we'll start at this point where he says, you claim that NASA engineers don't use KE. So this is the kind of bullshit stuff, right, where you're just saying, okay, well, that's just a bullshit statement. Yes, I have. Okay, and you're going to somehow debunk it with this nursery school video that won't have a damn thing to do with kinetic energy. So let's go to that. And then we'll read the rest of the comment. I haven't even read the comment yet because, it's going to be all evasion. Because I've made the arguments. The arguments are in the videos, and I made them redundantly now. Like in 3 different videos, I pointed out what's wrong with his experiments, and he didn't pay any attention. That's the fact. All right. So let's start at the little trivial beginning. Blah, blah, blah. Little NASA show physics. Okay. So this isn't the physics that lands on the moon. Okay. This is just the mush they do for PR reasons. And it's all baby talk, frankly. It's like they're talking to absolute idiots. And this is what he's using as evidence of something. So we know, anybody who knows anything about physics knows that there's 2 ways they use the word kinetic. One way is 1/2 mv squared, and the other way is just to say something like active energy versus stored energy, or trapped energy. Just as there's 2 ways to use the word elastic. Elastic in hard and unmalleable, and elastic in the sense of the energy is actually stored in some deformation, okay, that allows the energy to be restored. The deformation corrects itself. And those are 2 different things, okay? Hard and unyielding and completely mushy but restorative. Those are completely different things, and they're using the same word for the completely different things, you see? So this is more evidence that their physics isn't very thought out. It isn't well stated. It isn't perfectly precise. It's sloppy. And it's sloppy verbiage to use the word kinetic when you really mean active. And the definition they use for kinetic energy, the movement of matter, is exactly the same definition for what momentum is. So again, it's just, I shouldn't even have to argue this. This is so imbecilic. These are such silly little word games. It should be so beneath an intelligence to sit there and play a word game and say kinetic energy is the movement of matter. But momentum is a completely different thing, even though it's exactly the same thing, the movement of matter.
Welcome to the International Space Station. I'm astronaut Joe Acaba. Today, we're going to talk about potential.
All right, so I will try to fix the volume so it's more perfect, but who knows what you get when you do that. I will try to meter it.
And kinetic energy. Let's get started. Kinetic energy is the energy an object has because of its motion.
Now, it's exactly what momentum is. Momentum is the, the momentum it has, right? We'll use the same word twice, okay? Kinetic energy is the energy an object has because of its motion. Well, you could say exactly the same thing about momentum.
An object can store energy based on its position. This is called...
So again, this is silly. The object doesn't store anything. This is like me saying my boat has potential energy sitting on the shore, okay, because it's next to the Mississippi River. And if it's not next to the Mississippi River, somehow it doesn't have any potential energy. Like somehow the boat feels different. No, the boats are all the fucking same, and all there is you can either put the object in the stream of energy or you cannot put it in the stream. You could put it in the stream and have it tied to a dock. Well, then it's not going to go anywhere and it's not going to get any energy. So again, the real trick is gravity is clearly an active force, and clearly the boat isn't. Damn.
Potential energy. On Earth, imagine dropping an object from a raised position. As an object's altitude above the Earth's surface increases...
Okay, so it's just such a wrong thing to say, as the ball's altitude above the Earth increases. So this is a physicist linking to a video that says something really, really stupid, okay? Obviously, as the ball goes higher, actually the force decreases by the inverse square law. So you're not gaining more by going higher. All you're getting out of it is a longer free fall time. The ball will fall further because the ground is further away, not because the ball is higher. Higher isn't good to get more energy. Okay, so right there it's just said so poorly, and it really doesn't explain to the little kiddies what's really happening. What's really happening is the ball is docked. Okay, the man is holding the boat. It's the same thing as the boat being docked, but it's in the stream. Okay, so the stream is going straight into the center of the earth, and all you're going to do is let the ball go in the stream, and you're going to count how long it gets pushed by the stream. That analogy works quite perfectly. That's exactly what's going to happen. So obviously, if we have a finish line and I start with a shorter track, I'm not going to get as much energy into the ball because the ball's not going to be in the stream getting pushed. I mean, this is such bullshit. This is their physics, okay? This is how they want to teach it. This is how they want it to present it, with basically just a bunch of canards. That this is about going higher in the gravity, when no, it's about lengthening the time the ball is in the gravity, falling freely. It's the only time it can collect more velocity is if it's not tied to a dock, or it doesn't have its anchor in the water, or it's not hitting a rock. The only way it can collect energy is to not bang into something that takes it away. That's the truth. Quote me. That's the truth, not this mush this guy's saying.
Gravitational potential energy also increases. The potential energy stored due to its position is...
So again, it's not stored due to position. It's stored due to the length of distance you're going to allow it to fall. And it's not really stored. Is that really the right word to use, that it's stored energy? No, you're releasing it into a stream of energy. You're just sticking your water wheel in the river, and now you can collect energy from the water. You can collect energy from the gravity by allowing something to freely move in the gravity, to be pushed by it, to allow the pushing to work. You have to use force to stop it from collecting more push.
Now being converted to kinetic energy.
So just more nonsense. It's clearly only thing you're doing is taking the active energy of gravity and then you're converting it into the active energy of the ball. And the fact is, if it was a stream, you're taking the energy from the stream. The stream gets weaker because you've collected the energy. Just as a stream, the flow of the water after the water wheel is a lot less energetic because guess what? You took the energy.
We also observe this with elastic potential energy.
So now this will be funny, right? Because this word elastic doesn't mean much. Doesn't mean anything, frankly. There's no elastic potential energy. You have to actually put the energy into the rubber band. You have to actually compress the spring with actual energy. There's no potential energy that came from nowhere. The energy had to come from somewhere. Even if the somewhere was 1 billion years ago inside of a supernova, the energy had to come from somewhere.
Okay, new term.
Okay, little baby talk. Elastic potential energy occurs when objects are compressed or stretched. Well, obviously that doesn't make any sense. A steel ball's pretty elastic. A titanium one's even more elastic. Are generally deformed in any manner. So clearly, you're not going to deform the titanium. Creating potential energy. So there we go. That's a crappy definition, completely unscientific. Most objects that are elastic are actually in the other category of being too hard to store energy. They reflect it. That's why they're elastic, is they don't absorb the energy because they're too hard to do it. So this definition is garbage. It's not science. It's not right. It's not correct. It's not accurate. It's not, and certainly incomplete as a theory of elasticity.
Potential energy occurs when objects are compressed and stretched, or generally deformed in any manner, creating...
So this just covers the rubber stuff, doesn't go anywhere near all of the elastic interactions that take place because something does not yield in terms of deforming or misshaping.
Potential energy. Think of this bungee or a spring.
Yeah, but don't think of a round steel ball in a Newton's cradle. Because that's not what we're talking about for some reason. Because our whole subject is a mess. Because we don't really understand what energy is anyway. But we make videos about it.
Okay, Joe, what's next?
Yeah, Joe. Go ahead, Joe. So this is probably some bullshit clip I've already played, but we'll see.
We pull back on the band and create.
Oh, yeah. So this proves there's 1/2 mv squared. This doesn't just prove momentum. You're putting energy into the elastic. You're misshaping the little molecules. You're stretching the little molecules. The little molecules don't like being stretched. They don't like being apart. That's why this stuff is is stuck to itself in the first place. That's why it's an elastic band in the first place. Is because the atoms are really, really like each other, and you're trying to pull them apart, and they're going to try to stay together. So you're storing energy in the disruption of the chemical bonds of the substance, and you're just going to get it back again, some percentage of it depending on what materials you're using, some better than others. As pointed out, tennis balls ain't all that. I mean, I thought tennis balls were pretty bouncy, but no, you only get 75% of your energy back.
Potential energy. When we release the potential energy is...
So obviously this has nothing to do with 1/2 mv squared. This just has to do with active energy versus stored energy or trapped energy. Nothing to do with mv squared versus momentum. Yet he linked to it. So this is the straw man. This isn't a response to a damn thing I've said. It's not a response to a damn thing I've argued. There's nothing in this video that I say, that couldn't happen. Straw man all over the fucking place.
Converted to kinetic energy.
The question is does that guy have a certain amount of momentum? I can calculate the m times the v, like Newton, Galileo, and Descartes all thought it had a certain quantity of motion. Is that the truth? It has a certain quantity of motion. It will travel at a certain velocity because of the energy put into the spring, and you don't need to square anything, and you don't need to have anything. And that answer is perfectly satisfactory. Yes, of course. There's nothing in this experiment that proves that analysis incorrect. They have to hide the special, whatever, military. Yeah, they're little military projects.
Here on the International Space Station, we are still under the influence of gravity, primarily due to our position with the Earth.
Which is another why he should just explain that, okay, it's not like 4.4 or 4 or 5 meters per second until you get a certain distance. He should just point out the distances, right? So I guess it's the Earth is 4,000 miles, so you do the inverse square law and you try to figure out, oh yeah, they're only 100 miles or whatever, so they're not nearly enough to put a real dent in the 9.8. So they're still pretty much in whatever, 9.7 gravity. They're still in a pretty significant gravitational field or stream, but the advantage is they're doing the centrifugal thing. Okay, so they're constantly falling, but they're being restored, just like you on Earth are constantly falling and you're being restored. They are being restored by a force that's just as invisible as the gravity, so they have no idea it's happening.
So when I have this ball on this ramp, normally back on Earth, I release the ball and it rolls down the ramp. Due to it.
But he's already falling, so the ball can't roll because he's falling as fast as the gravity is pushing. So he's moving as fast as the ball can move because they're both moving in the stream. So he's moving into the Earth, he's falling towards the Earth. Obviously, if he lets go of the basketball, it's not going to go anywhere because it's falling at the same rate he is. Not news.
Change in its potential energy that's being transferred to kinetic.
So again, and there's no change. The rolling down thing is the Galilean trick. I mean, Galileo was a really smart guy and figured out I can slow down the whole process by rolling something down a ramp. And if I really think about it, what I'll figure out is that the ball is being pushed the entire time, and all the extra energy is going into the ramp. And then maybe someday science, maybe 500 years into the future, maybe some scientist could actually figure out how to measure that heat and recognize that the momentum is all conserved. The energy of the gravity is conserved because, yes, the part that's extra in terms of how much time you were falling is in fact somewhere.
Kinetic energy. But as you can see, it doesn't happen here. So it doesn't mean we don't have potential energy. It just means we're not converting it at this time.
Okay, so does it make any sense? The only reason the ball isn't moving is because your air and you and everything in this ship is all falling at the same rate. So how can the ball possibly fall at a different rate? It's going in the stream as fast as it can. All the other pieces are moving in the stream as fast as they can. So all the pieces, all the boats are going down the stream. Yes, you can't drop something into the stream and have it go faster because the stream has a certain speed and that's it. You're all already going the speed of the stream. There is no place to gain any extra momentum from because you're all free falling in the stream. You're all sailing.
To kinetic energy. And why is that? Gravity is pulling us down. But we're moving super fast.
Okay, so that explains why you're weightless in the room, in the sense why you're all moving the same speed. But this reasoning isn't the reason why the ball doesn't move. The ball doesn't move because there's no differential between you and the ball. You're both doing the same thing. There's no stream to drop the ball in. There's no faster stream to drop the ball in than the stream you're already sailing in. I mean, this is a junk science video. Plain and it's just junk. This is a terrible way to describe it. Just awful. But the funny thing is, he's going 17,500 miles per hour. So, I'm making the point how, yeah, it's all about how long you're in the gravity and motions. And the faster you go, the less friction there is and all that kind of stuff. And this is a pretty damn good illustration of it.
And so what it is we're bending around the Earth in this...
So he's not really bending around the Earth. The gravity is pushing you down, but your velocity you keep going past the curvature of the Earth. If the Earth was in fact flat, you would be out of luck. Okay, you would be crashed into the sand by the gravitational force. But because the Earth is a round ball, you keep passing the curve. You keep passing the curve.
Perpetual falling motion. Thanks for joining me on board the...
Yeah, so what a pile of crap. Oh, this is just junk propaganda for a silly nonsense, a poorly worded, poorly stated. It's just mind poison. That's all this is. This is just brain. This is neuron lead paint. This is crap physics.
International Space Station. We're sending it back to Earth so you can try your own experiment.
Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, well, I don't have a space station, so I can't try my experiments here that you could do. And I certainly can't just stick a GoPro camera out one of these windows, wherever the windows are, and just take a few pictures to see if I can prove the Eddington experiment with a 400 times better resolution. I'd love to be able to ask this guy, do you really think your physics has any credibility when you can do all this crap up in space and you have 400 times better resolution and you haven't even attempted to repeat the Eddington experiment and prove light's bent twice as much by gravity? Instead, you'll just say it is, okay, without any proof. And frankly, it's any proof because even Eddington wrote in his own journal, I would not stake my life on these results. Yes, a 2 o'clock eclipse in the rain. It's probably a good reason not to stake science's reputation on that. But they did.
See you next time.
So this is what these critics of mine are defending. I'm sorry, that wasn't exactly centered. But you didn't miss anything, right? It was so frickin' moronic that you couldn't have missed anything because it didn't say anything except a bunch of jargon and poorly stated argument. They didn't define elastic correct, and they certainly didn't define energy correct, in the sense that obviously the same definition of energy for kinetic energy is exactly the same as the practical definition of momentum. It's the energy something has because it's moving, and it has a mass. All right, that was just terrible. Nothing new there. Let's see if the little whatever chatters are left. Let's see if they had anything at all to say just about that tripe. Can anybody say, gee, I wish physics would be a little bit more scientific? I mean, what's that crap? Brainwash? That's all that is. That's brainwash. That isn't anything like science. Why are you indoctrinating people into science with mush like that? Tripe. There's no kid young enough that he needs to be talked to like that. And certainly doesn't need those complete canards of an explanation. All right, so here's physics, Michael. You've made claims, but again, you have failed to make any specific predictions. So it's a big fat lie. I mean, every one of my videos is diagramming the predictions. Diagramming what will happen, what can happen, and certainly predicting what can't happen, which is I can't make a free energy machine. And your theory says I can by putting a stick on the ground with a rock in the middle. All right, predictions of experiments, and then test those experiments. Again, the testing part really should be done with the scientific equipment. It should be done with the high-speed cameras, and it should be done with all the crap that's obviously out there that none of you physicists ever tell anybody to use to do actual physics. So you don't bother doing any actual physics. You don't bother doing any actual clinical scientific experiments. You just do a bunch of claiming. Then you tell me that the young double-slit experiment, when his pattern wasn't a double-slit pattern. It's a fact. The fact is the pattern his model creates isn't a double-slit pattern. And you just keep lying. And then you sit there and tell me I'm supposed to do all the experiments? For the last 300 years, all the experiments you haven't done, I'm supposed to be doing them all? And then I could point to the Mythbusters experiment. I mean, it's there. Go look up car crash and Mythbusters. They crash a car at 100 miles an hour. They crash a car at 50 miles an hour. Guess what? The 100-mile-an-hour car does not crush 4 times as much. Doesn't happen. Doesn't even come close. It's actually almost exactly 1/2. All right. Your claims and incredulity. Again, I don't know exactly what my incredulity is about. Where exactly is it? I couldn't be any more sincere and any more, I'm just saying there's, what room is there? You actually believe I'm doing this as theater, you motherfucker? I mean, what the fuck? Where do you think there's any deception here besides I'm arguing with a bunch of religious kooks? Okay, and I think it's really important that the human brain isn't warped and distorted and perverted by a bunch of lies and distortions about reality. You're selling this toxic waste of entanglements in ESP and poofing into existence and poofing out and wavicles, all this crap, all right? And I'm sincerely find it offensive that you're sitting there and perverting the human race with this crap. All right. Let's see, your claims and incredulity are not evidence, and nor are your non-experiments, okay? Your non-proof of something as obvious that should be obvious. 4 times the energy to go twice as fast. You've had 350 years to show one frickin' experiment where you had to feed the horse 4 times more fuel to go twice as fast, or you had to do something, all right, where you had to use 4 times the fuel to go twice as fast. There's no evidence of it. There's no evidence that it takes 4 times the force, okay, to get something to twice the speed. Newton obviously said it's only, an equal amount of force. You want to go twice as fast? Just go add twice as much force. 3 times the force, 3 times the speed. Those are his exact words, pretty much. That's a fair quote. And you're not responding to anything. All right, which I thought is what you wanted. Now, what I want is an actual counter argument to anything I've said in this video or any of the other videos. All right, I have directly addressed. You haven't directly addressed anything. So it's just such a complete. You haven't directly addressed a single one of my counter arguments. Not a single one of them. I mean, where? Quote where you addressed anything I said, except to say, no, it doesn't. I mean, where did you explain anything? Where did you quote me and say, that doesn't happen, here's the experiment that proves it? Nowhere. Okay. Many of the claims you made, no, you didn't. Despite your denials. No, you didn't. Okay, my denial stands. Let's have a wager on it, and let's see if anybody can find where you actually addressed a single one of the points I made in the videos. Because you haven't. I mean, so this is where the incredulity gets. This is where it really gets contentious. Because, frankly, that's just a fucking lie. You haven't come close to addressing a single one of the points made. The alternative theory works better than your theory. The momentum theory always works. You haven't pointed out where Newton got a wrong answer somewhere. Can you show me the paper where Newton got a wrong answer because he wasn't using 1/2 mv squared? Nothing. There's nothing from you. Let's see. I also know that you don't provide a link for my video when you review them. I've also noted, well, you haven't noted it to me, all right, and frankly, your name is in the title. Okay, so if that's not good enough, and I'm just saying, frankly, you're not even addressing me as a human being. So this is the funny part, right? He supposedly made these videos because I provoked the interest, and partially he stated as if these videos were going to be a reply to what I was saying. Now, he neither mentioned draft science at all. He didn't mention the channel. He didn't mention me. He didn't mention the arguments. He didn't mention a single part of it, and he just did a little propaganda videos. And then he writes in the text something, but that's it. So besides responding to my comments, which are already made, he hasn't even commented on my videos. Yeah, so... I mean, what a weasel. All right, anyway, so your audience can't easily check my data for themselves. Well, if the audience is too stupid to be able to figure out how to find your channel, then you really think they can do this physics? You really think so? You really think so? You really think somebody who can't find your channel from the word Physics Michael right in the title, you think somebody who can't handle that is going to understand your abstract math or any of this other crap? You really think so, huh? I don't think so, fuckhead. Okay, anyways, geez, you put a pile of... Seems a dishonest tactic. No, it's just a nuisance, frankly, okay? So, yeah, that's it. I didn't want to edit the description, so, yeah, I didn't think of it. And, frankly, it doesn't really make any difference, right? I'm just saying that I could go do the same thing to every critic of me and point out how they aren't linking to my videos properly or some other kind of bullshit. The actual argument I actually made. Instead they dig up a video from 5 years ago or something. Anyway, for the argument you brought up here, so yeah, one tiny paragraph. So I responded to a paragraph of his text. Okay, and then I made a video pointing out, well, here's the real substance of the argument, and he didn't pay any attention. Okay, explain why rolling objects roll 4 times as far with only twice the velocity. So I couldn't make it any clearer. The argument there is a simple question. Do you believe friction is linear? That is, do you believe as something rolls, it doesn't matter how fast it goes, it loses exactly the same energy per inch. So per inch, it loses the same energy to the friction. Even though I've pointed out that the faster I go across this scale, the less the scale deflects, meaning the less gravitational potential energy has pushed me into the ground. Obviously, less contact with the ground. Less pressure, less contact. So it's overwhelmingly a fact, in my opinion, a proven fact. I could prove it, but I mean, do I really have to prove it to you that the faster this goes over the scale, once I'm going faster than 9.8 meters per second, of course, I've already defeated the scale measuring my mass and my weight as the same. My mass is now going to appear, my weight is going to show less mass, less pressure applied. Clearly not an indication that there's any such thing as linear friction in the case of gravity-imposed friction. It's not linear. It's not the same per foot. Now, will he challenge that argument? No. Will he evade that argument? Yes. Let's watch. All right. Haven't actually heard this explanation. So did you think about it and say, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's why it doesn't. That's why it goes 3/4 of the distance before it's going half the speed. It's because it's not as much friction. Oh yeah, that makes sense. But I'm guessing you don't accept this as a direct consequence of conservation of energy. So what the fuck could that possibly mean? I mean, I've only made this point over and over. You have to conserve energy. There's no place to get free energy from. You can't destroy the fucking energy. You can only get it from something else that has momentum. You can only give your momentum if you have momentum. I mean, I can't make it any clearer. And then what does he say? But I'm guessing you don't accept this as a direct consequence of the conservation of energy. I mean, amazing lie, amazing crap. I couldn't be more aggressively defending the conservation of momentum. Yeah, I don't believe in 1/2 mv squared. So I'm sorry, when you say the word energy, I can't say, oh yes, I don't believe in the pixie power. No, that's true, okay? I don't believe in conservation of pixies, okay? But the thing you think pixies are doing, I do believe in that. I believe in the outcome. I don't believe in your theory of pixies. Oh, shit. If it involves the claim I have heard from you, okay, that friction on a level surface depends on speed, well, there you go. Yes, that's the claim you have to debunk with something. So let's see what he says. That's going to require its own evidence. We have the evidence in the sense that we have the experiment. But where did you measure the friction? Where did you, with all of your technology, billions of dollars of technology, space shuttles, space stations, why didn't you have to produce evidence? You're saying the friction is linear. I'm saying the friction isn't linear, and I can prove it because of the velocity issue. You know, the fact that it's only going half the speed after it's gone 3/4 of the distance. That's a pretty good dramatic evidence that, oh yeah, okay, it's obviously not losing the energy at the same rate when it's going different velocities. It's losing the energy at a different rate. So that's my evidence. Now the fact that you have zero evidence, okay, how can you possibly say that that's going to require its own evidence? What are you talking about? When are you going to do the experiment? How many hundreds of years do we have to wait before you actually do the experiment yourselves? And not just you holding up a scale. I think holding up the scale is just a reasoning test. Do you think there's any hope that it isn't true that the faster I go across the scale, the less the scale is going to deflect, the less gravitational energy I'll collect? I'm collecting gravitational energy. I'm going through a little space of gravity really, really fast. It's like walking through the stream really fast. Less of the current can hit me, right? The faster I go, the less the current will deflect me. All right. So he hates those demonstrations. You're not allowed to do a demonstration. You're just like these little space shuttle losers, right? These fucking astrokooks. You know, they did this cheap, cruddy little experiment. No data collection, nothing. Okay, just rickety and cruddy. That's brilliant. But somebody else does it opposing your theory, then it's not good enough. I'm not advocating for shitty experiments, frankly. I'm advocating that all this trillions of dollars that science has been given to throw in the garbage, that maybe you use a little bit of that money to do these experiments. All right, wait. Not just you holding up a scale and not pushing on it as much when you move your hand quickly. So he really doesn't, he thinks there's some hope that demonstration, that theoretical demonstration, I'm just theory showing you. Do you really think it is possible for me to weigh the same if I go 1,000 miles across this scale, that the scale will read my actual weight? You really think that's possible? I don't think there's any chance he thinks that's possible. I think he knows perfectly well, yes, you are correct. And here he is evading saying the simple words. Yes, you're correct, but then he could say some other but, where he actually explains how, well, that piece of evidence doesn't mean anything. point out how it doesn't mean anything that there's less pressure, because less pressure doesn't have to do with the amount of friction there is. He could say something stupider like that, but he chooses to just evade the truth. Take any responsibility for him knowing it's the truth. He knows it's the damn truth, right? We can all agree, right? Do we really think physics, Michael? Let's have a survey. So what does the survey say? Does anybody really think physics, Michael, doesn't think that the faster I go across this scale, the less I'll weigh? Does anyone really think he doesn't know that's a truth? I mean, there's just no fucking integrity or manness in any of these creatures that talk this shit. You can't admit any facts because your truth is so weak. You can't concede anything because we have such a weak argument. I can't give away anything. So I can't even admit something so fucking obvious that, there's less pressure. The faster you're going, the less pressure you're putting on the surface. Yeah, that's how gravity works. It's not per foot. It's, per amount of time. He knows that. All right. I've explained why levers must conserve momentum. And I've explained the errors in your understanding of momentum. So he hasn't explained anything. He's just saying it's an error. You're not allowed to believe in momentum, okay? He's proven somewhere that momentum isn't energy. That everything in the universe that moves isn't being moved by something that has momentum. I'm going to argue that everything that moves is being moved by something that has momentum. The gravity has momentum, photons have momentum, everything does have momentum. And the fact is, it's just momentum exchanges. And that's all you can have in the universe. He provided no elucidation of why that can't possibly be true. There's no evidence that can't possibly be the way the universe works. He never debunked Newton, Descartes, or Galileo. He just declared them wrong. All right. It's only conserved if we're looking at a system. So this is inside of our frame. Who's looking outside the system? None of the experiments have anything to do with anything outside the system. They're all perfectly diagrammed. There's no system trespasses here. So again, it's just a canard, another way of distracting the argument. Oh, somehow you violated the system rules. No, I didn't. There's actually no system violation rules in my lever drawings. None whatsoever. All right. With no external forces applied. Blah, 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 blah. Baby talk. Obviously, you have to apply a force. So you don't have an experiment. There's no experiment without you applying a force from somewhere. So you have to store it somewhere and then bring it in like a piece of dynamite. You have to do something to bring in the source of the action. Damn. God, I just hate this planet. All right, direction matters. I need somebody to tell me that, huh? Okay. So objects moving in different directions will have different momenta. So what does that have to do with the lever? Oh, that's right. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. There's nothing about a lever experiment that has anything to do with any direction problem. It's up and down pretty much exclusively. Nothing really complicated about directions. Can consider as plus and minus. There's no plus and minus issue here at all. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, this is why when they won't directly respond to a video, they won't directly respond to a drawing, they won't directly respond to anything you point out. And this is how they just evade the whole subject, is by bringing up this fake crap that somehow this lever example has something to do with plus and minus energy. Plus and minus momentum, going right and going left, when it's just too simple. Oh, now this pen is failing to perform properly. Okay, so the simple argument is I drop, a 2 mass a certain distance. Okay, that's the force I'm putting in, is the gravitational energy collected by that much mass falling that much distance, and then I put a frickin' half mass over here, And the obligation is there's no direction problems. This doesn't zero this or any of that crap. But clearly, if you're going to do your conservation of momentum, these would be the opposite directions. You're just saying you started with 0, you're going to end with 0 or some sort of mush. But it clearly doesn't matter. The clear argument is does this leave conserving the momentum? This goes in. This, you're saying, doesn't conserve momentum. The lever fails to conserve the momentum, and this will not leave at twice the velocity. That's your contention. I can't make, okay, a 5-ton train going 10 miles an hour out of a 10-ton train going 5 miles an hour. I'm arguing, yes, you can, because they have exactly the same energy, momentum, power, force. They contain the same force. They will light the same number of light bulbs. They will move the same number of horses. They will win the same tug of wars. They will defeat the same enemy. That's the simple challenge, and there's nothing here. Nothing on the subject. This was demonstrated by my conservation of energy video. No, obviously these are nothing videos. Nothing's actually measured. He just claims there's 374 joules of energy. Says you. Okay. With the elastic collision and the carts launched by spring example. Okay, so I pointed out in the video. He's saying it's a conservation of energy video, and it couldn't be more exactly the opposite. Okay, so we have a consistent spring. He pushes the little plunger. See, the cart has a little spring on it. It's just so little cute. All right, it has a little plunger with a spring on it. Okay, and so it pushes flat. So it's a certain amount of spring compression. So he does 2 experiments with exactly, right? Same, okay, force. Same spring compression. Exactly the same. And the one experiment, he puts light things. No, the next experiment, he puts more than twice as heavy, actually. But, okay, so you have 1s and then you have 2s here. Okay, in this experiment, the total momentum, if I measure how much momentum this has and I measure how much momentum this has, the total momentum, let's say, was 1,000. In this experiment, the total momentum, if I measure this and I measure this, is 2,000. How is that conservational? How does that demonstrate the spring, the energy inside the spring, the force trapped inside the spring is the same force, and yet I got 2 different amounts of force potential, that is stuff capable of forcing something out? How can I have these 2 different numbers, and how can you say I conserve the momentum? And the obviously implication with this would be that I can get more and more energy by going heavier and heavier, and that I get less and less energy going smaller and smaller. And obviously that theory doesn't make any sense. So clearly this was a mistake. These numbers are crap. Your experiment was crap. That's the accusation. And the fact that those numbers don't match and you didn't conserve the energy in the spring clearly indicates your experiment was crap. All right. So nothing was demonstrated. So obviously those experiments had nothing to do with a lever and explaining how a lever works and explaining how the lever fails to conserve the momentum, especially in the case where I'm converting from a 10-ton train to a 5-ton train because there's technically less weight on the actual fulcrum, which should be a huge advantage to not losing the energy someplace. And you only have one place to lose it, frankly. All right. You've claimed that NASA engineers don't use KE. Is that how far down we are already? I was demonstrating my yes, okay, that's really where we are. So obviously I played that tripey video that has nothing to do with 1/2 mv squared, right? Absolutely nothing to do with joules versus foot-pounds. Nothing to do with the subject. All right, bullets can't possibly have 1,000 times the energy, should be in there, recoiling guns. my conservation of energy video. So he keeps calling it his conservation of energy video when it's his free momentum video. Free momentum in both experiments. The cart goes 2/3 the velocity, meaning that it doesn't conserve the momentum. And the other example is the springs produce different amounts of momentum on release of their energy. You release their energy completely, in the sense you don't stop the spring from pushing the objects in any way, and they don't come close to having the same momentum. All right, my conservation of energy video. So no conservation of momentum in this video. With the unequal masses, spring launch demonstrated that both objects are launched with the same momentum. So that's the delusion, right? Yes, they go the same way in both directions, but it's not the same momentum for the same spring compression. Somehow the spring didn't work when you put the different weights on the spring. It's not producing consistent results. It's not conserving the momentum. So it's clearly not a conservation of momentum experiment, because it clearly wasn't conserving the momentum. That's how you conserve the kinetic energy. You can't conserve the kinetic energy without destroying the momentum whenever you change the mass. Whenever you change the mass of something, you have to cause kinetic energy to go one way and momentum to go the other way. They cannot be consistent with each other anytime you convert energy from one mass to a different mass. But the lower mass can. The lower mass cart does indeed end up with more kinetic energy. No, it's less. Well, more kinetic energy, yes, because of the way the velocity, the higher velocity is squared. But the fact is that the heavy mass experiment produced more momentum. Momentum's my definition of energy. So every time you say the word energy, I'm really going to be thinking about, momentum. Okay, all of the statements regarding the history of this junk living force science. So he didn't touch the history. So we haven't heard a peep on it from him about his how he's a big fan of solitons and monads, because Leibniz really had the truth, and it's really about the soul inside of the cardboard box. This pen has a soul, and it has a living force. God endowed. God doesn't play dice with the universe. I mean, God takes care of everybody and everything. Leibniz believed the universe was actually perfect because a God wouldn't create anything other than a perfect universe. These are people dying of the plague, and he's standing in the middle of that carnage talking about how it's a perfect world. He sort of invented that phrase. All right, my conservation of energy. Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, that's the one where he's saying he debunked the gun argument. So this is how he deals with the fact that you have this fake notion that you can just break Newton's third law. There's no sign of the Newton's third law in the gun example. There's just no way to sit there and say there's any equal and opposite reaction when the gun only has 1 joule and the bullet has 1,000 joules. How the hell can you get away with saying, oh yeah, there's a third law that, yeah, it's all equal. The same amount of stuff is going this way, it's going that way. Well, clearly it's not. All right. All right, so we did that. All right, regarding the junk living force science, so let's read this. Okay, while the history aspects of how these ideas started, initial problems and revisions. So there was no problems with Newton's physics. It worked perfectly, and this was suggested 2 years before Newton. A year and, 13 months. Maybe it was just 11. 11 months before Newton published what everybody knew he was writing. So this is another part of Leibnizian shenanigans, right? Everybody knew Newton had been working on this for 5 years. Everybody was waiting for this. And Leibniz published 11 months before Newton. Okay, so he published mv squared as a thought idea, okay, as a truth, 11 months before Newton had even published. All right. Is interesting. It doesn't matter when discussing whether these models can make testable predictions of physical systems. So you haven't got the test. You can't show me a single test test demonstrating 4 times the fuel to go twice as fast. One of the most elemental aspects of your theory. One of the most boldest claims it makes. And you don't have a single frickin' piece of evidence. Amazing arrogance. I've responded to many of your arguments. So he said it again. I don't think any honest observer could say you responded to a single fucking thing I have said in counter to your wacky, silly religious theory. Okay. Patently. Huh? Patiently? No, there's nothing here. Okay, so there's no response in any of this, right? None of this is a response to a single thing I have argued. All right, anyway. I offer more time to you than I should have. So amazing. These comments where he says absolutely nothing except I've already proven everything. I've already proven it. Well, yeah, you have your counter theory that the weight is creating the force and that's making the cart move and it's about how long you're in the gravity. Well, I just totally dismissed that theory. What does that have to do with it? Gravity has something to do with time? No. That's all he did. All right, pointing out your error. So there's no pointing out of, where's the fucking error? So did you see where he pointed out an error somewhere here? Where I made a mistake? Where I said something wrong? Oh, I didn't see any of that. Which are numerous. Where? Where did you prove gravity's not a time-dependent force? Where did you prove that friction isn't variable based on speed? Where did you counter any of this, that you have to conserve momentum in a lever? Where did you do any of that? Oh, God, they're just so dishonest. And providing experimental evidence to back up my case. So again, the experiments I've explained that momentum works just fine, except in the case where he got more energy out of the spring, which is impossible, more and less, where he didn't conserve the spring's momentum, the capacity of the spring to push objects wasn't conserved, and the fact that he made free momentum in the other experiment. Yeah, I'll say that's garbage. You can't make free momentum. It's a shit experiment. Someday it's going to be proven to be a shit experiment. Then what are you going to say? Oh yeah, I was an arrogant motherfucker to sit there and say that crappy, shitty experiment was accurate? Yeah, boy, I suck. Isn't that what you're going to be stuck with? I mean, when you have to eat this crow, you're really not going to have a good time. And you are going to eat a lot of crow here. Okay. A lot of dead, maggot-infested crow. I and our superior ivory tower bullshitters. Yeah, well, anyway. I and others on these comment threads. So the comment threads are full of just absolute nonsense. You know, first a silly accusation by Piro that I somehow don't believe in Galilean relativity, which is a lie. I'm merely stating that I believe there is a test, okay, that you could drive 2 trains past each other, and if they had a weight sitting outside that was a different weight for each train, the fact is the momentum of the impact of those 2 things will be different depending on who actually is moving. If the train with the lighter weight is doing the moving, the impact, the outcome of the passing of the 2 trains will be completely different. So that's all I'm arguing, that there are tests you can do, okay, that will tell you the truth. You can open the fucking window and it'll tell you the truth. But yes, okay, let's pretend we can't open the window. Oh, I mean, their theory is so mushy. Mush. All right, so obviously he hasn't done a damn thing, and to sit there and talk about the commenters having said anything relevant is just ludicrous. Haven't asked you to respond to the results of my experiment. And I did. I drew your fucking experiment. So this liar, right? I've drawn it 3 times now. Shall I draw it one more time? Shall I draw his bullshit experiment one more time? I mean, I've already just did the 2 he just did, right? I mean, the free energy, the free momentum experiment, we've been over that so many times that I'm not going to sit there and explain again how, no, that doesn't happen. I could show you the Professor Lewin clip with the clay on his cart. I mean, his cart is clearly not what he claimed it to be in terms of its weight. He clearly rigged the experiment to come out with a mathematically consistent result, and he couldn't get it to happen, and so he cheated, clearly. All right. But this stupid experiment, I already pointed it out. I've said it 3 times now. I'm going to say it a 4th time, and this liar's going to say that somehow I haven't responded to it. I mean, dumb motherfucking liar. Okay, this is the experiment. There's nothing to it. All right, can you see that? Yeah. This is the source of the energy, gravity. How long it takes for something to fall in the gravity. So the free fall rate is a certain amount of time. All right, so you just find out how far it falls this distance and how fast does it, how long does it take? And then everything else is just going to be a matter of you slowing that down. And by slowing it down, meaning you're going to add more gravitational time, more time in the stream. And you're going to take all of that extra time, the energy that happens because this falls longer, and it's all going to go into this string and it's going to move this card. So the force, okay, the force that's going to move the card is going to be the change from the free fall time. All right, so change from free fall time. So whatever the change in the free fall time is, that's the force you collected at 9.8 meters per second. All right, so you take that time, you take this change in the free fall time, you multiply it by 9 times 8, you come up exactly with your amount of force, okay, and then you just apply that force to this mass, okay, and you'll know exactly what this velocity will be. So however much you slow this down from the free fall speed, okay, free fall speed, whatever it is over the free fall speed is exactly what goes into this card. That's the counter prediction. Now, you didn't measure these things. You didn't measure the time it takes the weight to fall, free fall. So we don't know that. We didn't have that in your experiment. Okay, it's the time it takes it to free fall. But that's the key. Oh, you're just so dishonest. Let's see. And others, the comment threads, I've asked you to respond to the results of my experiment, and the clearest response was noted by specifically, whatever that is. In his recent live stream around 1 point, he put it well. If an experiment matches with the kinetic energy theory, it's a faulty experiment. That's a lie. So it's not a quote. I didn't say that. All right. Well, I said this kinetic energy experiment, the free momentum experiment. If you're making free momentum, it's not real. There's something fake. Because, frankly, free momentum is free energy. You cannot make free momentum in any directional bullshit, okay? You can't shoot a bullet this way and undo the bullet that went that way. If I shoot a zip gun with 2 bullets going in both directions and fire the charge, I would be an idiot to say there's no bullets, there's no momentum. That would be idiotic. That one bullet undoes the energy of the other bullet. Silly. Okay. You don't really need to see this. No, that's why you're not seeing it. This demonstrates that it's not just misunderstanding. Okay, that's right. It does demonstrate you're just a little pathetic liar, frankly. All right? It does demonstrate it. You're hiding in this text comment. You won't respond to the actual stuff I draw and state. And instead you'll paraphrase and lie about what I said and what argument I made. Just like all the others. And I have offered to pay you to actually respond to the fucking arguments. And you won't give me your fucking price. How much do I have to pay you per hour, okay, to play my video and respond to what I actually say? You weasel. Which I'm happy to talk about and have discussion. I don't even know what this is. This demonstrates that this is not just misunderstanding. What does that even mean? Anyway, but intellectual dishonesty. Oh, so he's saying I've somehow been dishonest. So he can do this. He claims he's responded to something I've argued, that he's debunked my lever argument, he debunked my bullet argument, he debunked my gun argument, he debunked my spring argument. He's debunked all of the arguments with some sort of brilliant something or other. Well, it's not visible. It must be like dark matter, okay? You can see it, but I can't. Fuck. All right. It's playing chess with pigeons. Okay. Oh, I'll just call you a fucking pigeon molester. Yeah, this is like playing checkers with a pigeon molester. And I'm not interested in that. I don't give a fuck one way or the other. What I'm arguing is your physics is corrupt and you're a perfect example of the corruption. You're dishonest, you're cowards, you won't argue the fucking argument. You're just living in your fucking bishops and popes and preachers of a fucking piece of shit. Your religion is a piece of shit. Your Bible is a piece of shit. And you're just brainwashing the mind of man with this fucking drivel, and you're too cowardly to fucking make a stand-up argument. Okay. I think it is very likely that you'll take this as victory. No, I take it as a disgusting and depressing fact that you're all lying weasels. It revolts me. It makes me want to puke to think that intelligent people will do this. I thought intelligence gave people integrity. I basically said to myself, I'm a motherfucking piece of shit. And the only thing that gives me any dignity as a human being is the fact that I'm smart enough to know that. And that's power. Okay? Intelligence is power. And you're using it to be a lying scoundrel. You're sitting here being a scheming little petty dickless fucker, okay, and evading every fucking argument that's been made to you and treating me like some lesser being, even though I have spent the last 10 fucking years actually studying this crap, okay, that you people have been lying about for fucking hundreds of years. So what victory is there? To know that intelligent people are just as scummy as the goddamn fucking shoplifters and the petty pieces of crap trying to steal everybody's money? You're no better? And claim on your videos that I wasn't able to defend my position. You weren't willing to defend it. You weren't willing from the very beginning to defend it. You just sat there and said, oh, I like this energy subject. I'll make some more propaganda videos exactly like all the other propaganda videos. Yeah, no, I won't address a single fucking thing you have to say. That's what you said right from the beginning. Act all persecuted. No, I'm not persecuted in any way. You didn't persecute me in any way. You didn't do shit. That's the whole point. You didn't do goddamn shit. All right. Except beat your Bible. That's all you did. You just stood there and beat your Bible. Jesus is God. Jesus is God. You must believe. Jesus will give you candy if you believe in him. That they won't listen to arguments, etc. Well, you clearly won't. You won't respond to the actual arguments made. You just strawman the fuck out of me and that's it. And then you walk off. You're the one pretending there's a victory here for you. But I'm not interested in discussion with people who are not at least trying to have an honest discussion where you consider evidence, and you're not considering it. You haven't even asked for it, frankly. Again, I could just point out, look, I don't think the Mythbusters video is a great video, but frankly, it's experimentally pretty clear. I mean, you can't get much clearer than crashing a car into a brick wall at 100 miles an hour and then crash it at 50 and look at the difference. Clearly nowhere close to 4 times the damage. If you're actually able to bring something, so it's the same thing you said before, substantive. My substantive argument is Newton didn't make mistakes, okay, and you're all lying scum to imply his theory was somehow empty and meaningless because it didn't have mv squared in it. He missed what the most there's nothing about physics that's any more important than defining energy correctly. Can there be something called more important than that? And you're saying that most important thing Newton had wrong. And I'm saying bullshit to that and all the fairy stories mv squared has created. All the fairy stories of the accelerators, all that crap. All the extra particles are all created by mv squared. If it wasn't for mv squared, we wouldn't have ever heard of a quark. We certainly never would have heard of a fucking neutrino. There'd be no talk of neutrinos if it wasn't for mv squared. mv squared creates free energy, and then in particle physics it ends up being, if there's any free energy, we're going to have to do something about it, so we'll have to call it something. So every time they make free energy with their fake theory, they decide to say, well, that's a neutrino. Okay. To a new discussion, then I'll be interested again. Like I said, you don't understand what discussion is. All right. I diagram a situation. I make overt arguments stating what's going to happen, and you, okay, don't in any way prove or demonstrate with anything called related evidence how that's wrong. So again, I made the linear friction argument. What did you say to that? Oh, I'm going to pretend I don't agree, that the faster you go across the scale, the less you'll weigh. You'll pretend that you don't agree. And that's all you did, right? Because you know for a fact it happens. You know for a fact the faster I go across that scale, the less I weigh. You know that's a fact. Why are you asking for evidence? Because you're evading the subject. Okay. Until then, I'll spend my time more productively and continue producing the kinds of videos involving actual experiments. And I'll continue to call you what you are, part of the conspiracy. Okay, everybody says it's not a conspiracy. You know, oh, well, you have a conspiracy theory. Yeah, my conspiracy theory is being proven. Science is full of dishonest weasels talking absolute shit who evade actual experiments and actual arguments. They just couldn't care less to prove their wacky theories. Instead, they're just preaching a fable. Okay. Videos on levers and rolling motion are on the list already. Well, I'd love to see you do the 10-ton train into the lever, so go ahead. Do the real experiment and just prove to us levers don't conserve momentum, okay? You're saying levers don't conserve momentum, so now prove it. I'd love to see your proof. You're welcome to make reviews. Well, I'm going to make them, whether you like it or not. And, in every way, I'm going to point out how this weasel will not allow a counter-argument, okay? And he won't actually address them. And I've introduced them as politely as I possibly could, and all you did was keep dismissing them. And now we're not polite anymore. And I have no reason to be polite anymore. Because look at all the time you've wasted of mine. Okay. But I probably won't be spending the time directly responding. So you don't directly respond to anything. Nothing in any of the videos was ever directly responded to. And he did answer a couple of questions almost, right? So we'll just go back to when I asked him simple questions, he gave me complicated answers. No, I can't use that definition of energy. I can't use the word momentum. All right. Responding to you unless some of those aforementioned changes happen. Well, fuck you. I mean, I'll respond to all kinds of assholes on the internet, and that's the category you're in. You've lied about the videos I've made, you've lied about the arguments I've made, and you've lied about your responses having a motherfucking thing to do with any of the arguments I've made. You've nowhere demonstrated that fucking goddamn gravitational force is linear to distance. No evidence whatsoever are you producing to prove 4 times the height means 4 times the force when it's only in the gravity twice as long, and it's 9.8 meters per 1 second. How can 2 seconds produce 4 units of force? That's a simple fucking question. Why don't you fucking contrive an answer to it? All right. So, that's probably enough. Let's see if there's anything in the old chat. The chat. Just the applauder. Damn, this is going to be the last stream. I don't blame you if it's true. So that's all I can relate to. But yeah, there's no point in... What have you seen in the streaming of these videos that comes close to anything called civil or decent responses to anything I say, except for the people who want me to personally tutor them? So besides people wanting me to personally tutor them, well, how much do you weigh if you're 1 foot on one scale and 1 foot on the other scale? Something really stupid. All right. And cranks, people who are just going to sit there and try to trigger me and force me, to go over it and over it and over it and pretend that somewhere there was an argument made. Well, what about the NASA video? I mean, right there, he's showing it with the little sparkly ball. Why is that little sparkly ball on a space station? Boy, I didn't even think of that. They took toys up to the space station. So instead of doing the Eddington experiment, they took fucking toys to the space station. Kitty toys. Oh, man. I am just on such a shitty planet. Just bad luck. Damn it. How many chatters? This is your last chance for a while. So, until, like I said, it's a pretty simple rule. Until one of these cranks, the Puros, the Brozos, it doesn't matter who, I guess. It'd be better if it was an actual physicist, but whatever. Until one of them actually plays my video through, like the 25 minutes of yesterday's video, so I start with 9.8 meters and I explain the lever and I explain the stupid spring experiment and I explain a few of these experiments. You have to play the video, and then you can't just sit there, and pick your nose. You have to actually point out where I'm saying something that isn't correct. That's your challenge. Now, if they can't do that, then, yeah, there's no point in doing live videos. And I'll just continue to make videos where I just keep emphasizing the points they are too much of a coward to respond to. They produce no functional, real response to at all. They don't counter-argue with any equally detailed description of where the force comes from and what makes the thing move. That's the obligation. I don't know. I don't think there was any other comments here. Maybe I'll refresh it and see if there's anything else from these turds. No, I don't think so. Let's see what number we're at. Yeah, 54. So he won't be getting 54 comments on any of his new videos, I'm sure. But anyway, I guess I'll just refresh it and see. Great video! That's what it'll get. Get people just willing to say, yes, just keep propagandizing for the mush. Thanks for the nice video, Michael. I really like the part where the springs don't make the same amount of momentum. You don't conserve the momentum because, I don't believe in conservation of momentum. It's so depressing. See what this says. There is no kinetic energy in a moving mass. There is force, mv, squared kinetic energy. What does that even mean? Wacky Graham flowers. There is force, mv, squared. That is kinetic energy by definition, retard. The energy is the energy of consistent work from a consistent force. Regards. Oh, this is that nut who puts regards, Graham flowers, and everything. 9 minutes ago. Jesus. That's hilarious. So that's really so insightful. This other guy was really nuts. Carl Argo. Complete nutter. Well, Farley is actually who it is. Fartley. Wilhelm Fartley. Okay, so future videos will be now not in the live category. They'll be in the regular video category. And I'll probably go back to putting most of them on the website. So you'll have to look there. Draftphysics.com, blah, 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 blah. And such. So, till the next time, which maybe will be never, because no one will ever actually argue the arguments I present, and they'll keep lying about what arguments I presented and keep distorting my arguments instead of actually countering what I actually say. Alright, so goodbye and such.